A couple of days ago, I posted a story called Footsteps. It was one of my many traumatic experiences from my childhood. There were a number of questions that made me curious about certain details about my childhood, so I spoke to my mother. And exacerbated by my questions, she said, "Why don't you tell them about the goddamn balloons already?" And I was like, "Oh shit, yes, definitely about the balloons." It hit me, something from my childhood that I had completely forgotten. The balloon story will definitely provide so much greater context for the previous stories, which I think you should definitely go listen to. Though the order isn't of vital importance, listening to my first story will put you in a place more effective, since I remember the events of Footsteps first. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask me and I'll try to answer them. Also, both stories are kind of long, so heads up for that. I'm just a little hesitant to leave out any details that might be important, because again, these experiences are really important to me. And if you really want to get to know me, you have to understand that I became the person that I am through these traumatic experiences. When I was 5 years old, I went to an elementary school that, from what I've come to understand, was really adamant about the importance of learning through activity. It was part of a new program designed to allow children to rise at their own pace. And to facilitate, this school encouraged teachers to come up with really inventive lesson plans. Each teacher was given the latitude to create his or her own themes, which would run for the duration of the grade. And all the lessons in math, reading, etc. would be designed in the spirit of these themes. These themes would be called groups. There was space group, sea group, earth group, and I was in community group. In kindergarten in this country, you don't learn much except how to tie your own shoes and how to share. So most of it isn't very memorable. I only remember two things very clearly. I was the best at writing my own name, and the balloon project, which was really the hallmark of community group, since it was a pretty clever way to show how community functioned at a really basic level. You've probably heard of this activity. On one Friday, I remember it always being Friday because I was excited about the project being at the end of the week. At every Friday towards the beginning of the year, we walked into the classroom in the morning and we saw that there was fully inflated balloons tied off with strings taped to each of our desks. Sitting on our desk was a marker, a pen, a piece of paper, and an envelope. The project was to write a note on the paper, put it in the envelope, and attach it to the balloon, which we could draw a picture on it if we wanted. Most of the kids started to fight over the balloons because they wanted different colors, but I always started on my note, which had a lot of thought into it. I put a lot of thought into them. All the notes had to follow a loose structure, but we were allowed to be creative within those boundaries. My note was always something like, "Hi, you found my balloon. My name is Matt, and I attend Ben John Elementary School. You could keep my balloon. I hope you write me back. I really like Dragon Ball Z, exploring, building forts, swimming, and friends. What do you like? Write me back soon." and then I would put $1 for the mail. And then I thought it was clever. Again, I was in elementary school. I thought it was clever, so I would write 4 stamps on the dollar. My mom always said it was unnecessary, but I thought it was genius, so I always did it. The teacher took a Polaroid of each of us with our balloons and had us put them inside the envelopes with all our letters. They also included another letter that I assumed explained the nature of the project and a sincere appreciation for anyone's participation in writing back and sending photos of their cities or neighborhoods. That was the whole idea, to build a sense of community without having to even leave our school and to establish a safe contact with other people. It seemed like such a good idea, fun idea. Over the next couple of weeks, the letters started to roll in. Most came with pictures of different landmarks, and each time a letter would come in, the teacher would pin the picture on a big wall map. The wall map indicated how far the balloons had actually traveled. It was super smart, a really awesome idea, because we actually look forward to coming to school to see what letters, or if we have even gotten any letters at all. For the duration of the year, we had one day of the week where we could write back to our pen pals or other students' pen pals in case our letter hasn't come in yet. Mine was always last. When I came in the classroom, I looked at my desk once again and I didn't see any letters waiting for me. But as I sat down, the teacher approached me and handed me an envelope. I must have looked so excited because I was about to open it. She put her hand on mine and said, "Stop," and said, "Please don't be upset." I didn't understand what she meant. Why would I be upset now that I have my letter? Initially, I was mystified that she would even know what was in the envelope. But now I realize that, of course, she was the teacher. She had to screed the contents just to make sure it was nothing obscene or inappropriate. But all at the same time, how could I be disappointed when I opened my envelope? I understood. There was no letter. No letter at all. The only thing in the envelope was a Polaroid, but I couldn't really make out what it was. It looked like a patch of desert, but it was way too blurry to even decipher. It appeared that the camera had been moved while the picture was being taken. There was no return address, so I couldn't even write back, even if I wanted to. My poor child soul was crushed. The school year passed, and the letters had stopped coming for nearly all the other students. After all, you can only continue a written correspondence with a kindergartner for so long, including myself. I had lost interest in the letters completely. Then I got another envelope. My excitement honestly was rejuvenated, and I revealed the fact that I was still getting letters when most of the other pen pals had abandoned their involvement. To me, it made sense that I would get another delivery. There was nothing but a blurry picture in my first one, so this was, I don't know, the universe making up for that. But again, there was no letter, just another picture. There was one more distinguishable this time, but I still didn't understand it. The photo was angled way up, catching the top corner of the building, and the rest of the image was distorted by the lens flare of the sun. Because the balloons didn't travel very far, and because they were all launched on the same day, the board became a bit cluttered, and so that the policy of the students still exchanging letters became that they could take the photographs home. My best friend Josh had the second highest number of pictures taken home by the end of the year. His pen pal was really cooperative and sent him pictures from all over the neighboring city. Josh took home, I think, 4 pictures. He was the second best. I took home 50, I think. About every envelope was screened by my teacher, but after a while, I even wanted to stop looking at the pictures. I saved them in my drawer next to my collection of rocks, my baseball cards, my comic books. I have a lot of Marvel. I like Spider Man for those who want to know, and little miniature baseball batting helmet collection that I get at the vending machine from the Winn Dixies. Bite me, ha! um, my mom had gotten me a snow cone machine for Christmas that year, and my friend Josh was obsessed. I guess he was talking about it so much that his parents bought him a slightly nicer one for his birthday, which was toward the end of, which was also towards the end of the school year. So, Christmas and birthday present. That summer we had the idea we should set up our snow cone machines and make a little money. So we thought we make a fortune selling snow cones at $1. My friend Josh lived in a different neighborhood, but we eventually decided that my neighborhood would be better because there was a lot of people who actually were walking down the sidewalks. We did this 5 weeks in a row until my mom told us that we had to stop. And I only recently have come to understand why she did that. On the 5th weekend, Josh and I counted our money because both had machines. We had separate stacks of money that we'd put together, and in one of the stacks we had split it evenly. We had made a total of $16 that day. As Josh paid me my fifth dollar, I had a feeling of surprise. The dollar said 4 stamps on it. Josh immediately noticed my shock and asked if he miscounted. No, I told him no. It was about the dollar. I told him I always put a dollar in my envelopes. So eventually the Penpal can buy stamps and they can send me back a letter. He was like, that's so freaking cool. And I thought about it, and my anxiety went away. And I thought it was pretty cool. The fact that the dollar had made it right back to me after changing so many hands floored me. I rushed inside to tell my mom, but my excitement coupled with her distraction by the phone call made my story incomprehensible to her. And she responded by simply saying, "Oh, wow, that's so neat." Frustrated because my childhood wonder was ruined, I ran back outside and I told Josh I had something to show him. Back in my room, I opened my drawer and I took out a stack of envelopes and showed him some of the pictures. I started with the first one and we went through about 10 before Josh completely lost interest and asked if he wanted to go play in the ditch. If you remember the ditch from when I got lost in the woods, that ditch. He wanted to go play in that ditch before his mom came to pick him up. So I put the pictures back and we did. We had our dirt war for a while and interrupted by some rustling in the woods around us that were obviously some raccoons and stray cats that lived there. But there was another sound that was just different. We were trading guesses at what it was, I guess, trying to scare each other. My last guess was that it was a mummy. But in the end, Josh kept insisting that it was a robot because of the sound that we heard. Before we left, he got a little serious and looked at me like right in the eyes and said, "You heard it, right? It sounded like a robot. You heard it." I had heard it. It sounded mechanical. I agreed that it was probably a robot. Our child minds couldn't fathom what possibly could have been in the woods. When we got back, Josh's mom was waiting for him at the kitchen table with my mom. Josh told his mom about the robot. Our moms just laughed it off. Josh went home. My mom and I ate dinner and I went to bed. I didn't stay in bed for long before I crept out and decided that due to the day's events, I would revisit some of the envelopes since now the whole affair seemed so much more interesting to me. I took the first envelope and set it on the floor and set the blurry desert Polaroid on top. I laid the second envelope right next to it and placed the oddly angled Polaroid of the building's top corner on the top, and did this with each picture until they formed a grid that was about 5 by 10. I was always taught to be careful with things that I was collecting, even if I wasn't sure if they had value. I noticed that the picture gradually became more decipherable. There was a little tree and a bird on it, and its speed limit sign, power lines, and a group of people walking into some building. And then I saw something that vexed me so powerfully that I now, as I'm recording this, distinctly remember a dizzying and capable of curling fear, a single repeating thought. Why am I in this picture? From my Penpal. In this photograph of a group of people entering a building, I saw myself holding hands with my mother in the very back of the crowd. We were at the very edge of the photo, but it was undeniably us. And as my eyes swam over the sea of Polaroids, I became increasingly anxious. I was feeling really odd. It wasn't fear. It was a feeling you get when you're in trouble. I'm not sure why I was flooded with that feeling, but I sat floundering in a distinct sense that I had done something wrong. And this feeling only intensified as I looked at the rest of the photos. After that one had been so powerful, it struck me. I was in every photo. None of them were close shots. None of them were only of me, but I was in every single one of them. Off to the side, in the back, in the bottom frame. Some of them only had the tiniest part of my face captured at the very edge of the photo, but nonetheless, I was there. I was always there. I didn't know what to do. Your mind works in funny ways as a kid, but there was a large part of me that was afraid of getting in trouble for simply. There was a part of me that was afraid of getting in trouble for simply being up. Since I had the looming feeling of having done something wrong, I decided I would wait until tomorrow. The next day, my mom was off of work and spent most of the mornings cleaning up around the house. I watched some cartoons. I imagined. I waited until I thought it was a good time to show her the Polaroids. When she went out to get the mail, I grabbed a couple of the pictures and I put them on the table in front of me, and I sat and I waited for her. When she returned, she was already opening the mail and threw away some junk. And I said, "Mom, can you come here for a second? I have these pictures. Just give me a minute, honey. I need to make these marks on the calendar." After a minute or two, she came and stood behind me and asked me what I needed. I could hear her shuffling with the mail behind me, and I just looked at the Polaroids and told her about them. As I explained more and pointed out to the pictures, her frequent uh-huhs and okays decreased. And she suddenly became completely quiet and only making a little noise with the mail. The next noise I heard from her sounded as if she was trying to catch her breath in a room that had no air. At last, her struggling gasps were conquered, and she simply dropped the remaining mail on the table and ran to the kitchen to get the phone. "Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't know about any of this. Please don't be mad at me." With the phone pressed to her ear, she was walking/running back and forth and shouting into it. I nervously fiddled with the mail sitting next to my Polaroids. The top of the envelope had something sticking out of it that I had thoughtlessly and anxiously pulled out until it came out. It was another Polaroid. Confused, I thought that somehow one of my other Polaroids had slipped into the stack of the mail. And now that I turned it over, I realized I've never seen this one before. And to my dismay, it was me. But this one was a much closer and clearer shot. I was surrounded by trees and I was smiling. But I wasn't the only one in the photo. My friend Josh was there too. It was us from yesterday. I started yelling at my mom, who was still yelling in the phone. I repeatedly yelled until she finally just responded to me, "What?" And I could only think to ask, "Who are you calling?" "I'm talking to the police, honey." "But why? I'm sorry, I didn't do anything." She answered me with the response that I never understood until I was forced to revisit those events from my early years. She grabbed the envelopes off the table and the picture of Josh and I. She held it up to me, close to my eyes, so that I could only look at her. And as I watched all the color begin to drain out of her face, tears welled in her eyes. She said that she had to call the police because there was no postmarks